And we have Chris Abani and Mukoma Ngugi with here to tell us more about their writing. Welcome both. Let's start with you, Chris. We just heard you grew up in Nigeria. You had to flee the country. How did that influence your writing?
Well, I think growing up in Nigeria itself had more of an influence. My childhood, small town, small library, and so a non-hierarchical sense of reading. So the influences range from comic books to Dostoevsky. And then when you leave your country, so to speak, having to adapt to different parts of the world and having to figure out where you fit in another culture, linguistic changes, what it creates is a sense of movement, a sense of fluidity, so that you're carrying something which is essentially Nigerian, essentially Igbo, but allows you to accommodate and take in new aesthetic challenges and new genres. So it's been actually liberating in many ways.
And Mukoma, you've lived in Kenya as well as the United States. So what are you? Are you an American? Are you an African? And again, how does that play into your writing?
Yeah, I would say I'm many things. I have multiple identities. You know, I claim both the US and Kenya as home. And I believe that I have a duty to love both and to be critical and, you know, to try and grow both. Certainly has influenced my writing. You know, Nairobi Heat features an African-American detective who goes to Kenya in search of his identity. So most of my writing, you'll find that sort of, I guess, you know, migrations of people in search of who they are.
And do your books sell where? How well do they sell across the continent of Africa? Where are your biggest markets?
Actually, ironically, I guess it's not ironically, but Germany.
Which is why,
yeah. For me, it's actually the US and Italy, of all places. My work is very densely packed with Catholic imagery. I used to be a seminarian. So I think that explains why Italians love my work.
and so why Germany? What are Germans looking for?
I've always tried to understand that.
Sorry, are they reading your books in English or
no,
in
they have been translated, right? Nairobi Heat and both Blackstone and Nairobi Heat have been translated. I think in a way because, for example, Nairobi Heat deals with the genocide in Rwanda. Somehow I think it helps Germans think through, you know, the Holocaust. But it's also just fun reading, and I think there's a big crime fiction market in Germany. So I think part of it is just enjoying the storytelling, that allows them also to think through the Holocaust, through the Rwandan genocide. That's the only answer I can think of.
And where are you on this notion of you're at an African literature festival? How do you feel about being put in the African box?
No, myself, I don't mind being an African writer. I'm an African writer, right? You know, but I think if we allow African writers to be many things, you know, then an African writer is somebody other African writers consider to be an African writer. So it's a roundabout way of saying that let African writers be many things, have multiple identities, and same thing with African literature.
How about you, Chris?
Well, I think it would be, if I didn't believe I was an African writer, then what would I be doing at an African writing conference?
What, selling books?
Selling books, definitely. But no, so I'm African, I'm Nigerian, I'm Igbo, I'm part English. So I am this complexities like Mukoma saying, but at heart, I suppose I am an African writer, and there's nothing wrong with being that, certainly.
Yeah, so let's a quick word about the political situation in Kenya. In Kenya, a bitterly contested election last year. Is the country likely to put itself together?
Well, the political elite will, at a minimum, right? If you look at the President Uhuru and also the opposition leader Raila Odinga, they're part of the same class. If you think of the definition of class as people who go to the same schools, you know, who intermarry and socialize together, right? They really are the same people. Just recently, they got together and shook hands, what people are referring as the golden handshake. So at least the elite will come back together, but I think they will continue using the people, you know, using divisions. Now, what I like to think about is President Uhuru Kenyatta, the family owns 560,000 acres of land, right? That's a lot of land for a country where people are dying and killing each other for, you know, for land. So I really hope Kenyans themselves will wake up and say, look, why we against each other, why are we allowing the political elite to use to divide us ethnically, when really they're the ones who are hoarding the wealth and, you know, and the land from us.
Final brief word to you, Chris Abani, and your thoughts on the way Africa, as a massive continent, right, is viewed outside the continent.
Well, is viewed in these monolithic ways that don't really make sense to us. I don't even know that Africans on the continent, we don't think we're Africans. We think we're...
Well, this is why I was asking
Yeah.
about the whole notion of an African Writers' Festival.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're in a sort of situation where certain kinds of stereotypes can work for you. They seem to limit you at first, but at least they put a sort of contextual framework and allow for a certain kind of conversation to happen. And in certain, not cynical, but actually sort of, if you're logical and think about it, you need to be able to sort of put something in a context that allows people who aren't familiar to
Just
approach.
bring them in.
Bring them in.
Okay.
So that they have and once they get in, they see how complex and how multi-layered it is.
Okay.
So I think it works. I think it's a great
We'll
idea.
leave it there. And
Can I just quickly,
Very briefly,
I would say we can think of African writing and the question as a fighting word, right? It allows us to struggle together as in a Pan-Africanist sense.
Mukoma wa Ngugi and Chris Abani, thank you both.
No, thank you very much. Yeah.